The weight in pounds of 20 dogs selected randomly from those adopted from a particular animal shelter in a 1-week period are listed below. So here's all of our data. The weights of dogs adopted from animal shelters is normally distributed. Construct the 90% confidence interval for the population standard deviation. So since we're asked about population standard deviation, this should be a good indication that we're going to use the chi-square distribution. But remember, we have to meet some requirements before we do that. The first requirement is that the data be randomly selected, and we are told that the dogs were randomly selected. So yes, we've met that. And also that the distribution needs to be normal, and we're told that the weights of dogs adopted from animal shelters is normally distributed. So we'll type yes in there to indicate that we've checked both of those requirements and can move forward using the chi-square. So to calculate the confidence interval, we're going to need to know the degrees of freedom, the sampled standard deviation. We will need to know the left and right hand chi-square critical values, and at the end we'll take the square root of all of that. So let's just begin. Here, n is equal to 20. Oops, not 220, 20. There were 20 dogs in the samples, so the degrees of freedom is n minus 1, which in this case is 19. Then we need to know the sample standard deviation. We'll let Excel do that for us. So we'll take the standard deviation that belongs to the sample, and we'll highlight the range of numbers and close your parentheses after that. Click OK. And so our sample standard deviation is 8.49829. Okay. All right, now we need to know the standard deviation squared, so we'll also let Excel calculate that for us. There's the standard deviation, and we want to square that. All right, the confidence level that we are looking for is 90%. So when we calculate the chi-square left and the chi-square right critical value, if 90% is in the middle, 10% is left on the outside, meaning 5% below and 5% above. So the nice thing is Excel has an inverse chi-squared. We don't have to look up the on the table for us. So we can do this. We'll look, and we want the chi-inverse, the chi-square inverse. The chi-square dot inverse will calculate the left-hand value, and on the left we want a probability or an area of 0.05. The degrees of freedom are 19. Close the parentheses and click OK. Then we can do the same for the right-hand side. So this is equal to the chi-square inverse on the right. The probability again on the right will be 0.05. The degrees of freedom are 19. And we click OK. All right, and then we're almost finished. Now we just have to calculate the lower bound for the confidence interval. So the confidence interval for the standard deviation will be the square root. Open up the parentheses. You'll take the square root. You want to take the degrees of freedom, which is 19, multiply that by the sample standard deviation squared, and then divide that by the right-hand chi-square critical value, and click OK. Then we'll do the same thing for the upper bound. That will be equal to, we'll use the square root function. We're going to use the square root. You'll take the degrees of freedom, and then we're going to multiply that by the sample standard deviation squared, and then divide that by the left-hand chi-square value. Click OK. All right, and that's everything that we need to know. Then we can come over here and make our interpretation. So I have it summarized over here. And at the bottom we can see this is our conclusion. We are 90% confident that the true value of the population standard deviation for the weights of dogs adopted from a particular animal shelter is between 6.75 and 11.65 pounds.